Hello guys, my name is Anna and I vlog daily from Ukraine since the start of the brutal Russian invasion. So if you're new to the channel, you want to follow the updates from my country in these challenging times, and most importantly, you support Ukraine and you don't support Russia, please subscribe and help us share this information. And today I want to speak about a very complicated topic about genocide that Russians commit in Ukraine. I know I've observed that for a certain period of time, many people, especially global politicians, they avoid using the term genocide because it leads to some consequences. But come on, what Russia does in Ukraine leads to hundreds of deaths daily. And this is a tragedy happening online. Sometimes I have this feeling that some people are more afraid of using the term genocide than they are of the genocide itself. And this is really bad, because sometimes when pure evil becomes visible, we have to react. Otherwise, unpunished evil grows. If you agree with me that Russia is a terrorist state and what it does in Ukraine is genocide, please subscribe and once again help us spread this information. But the news are quite satisfying, because I cannot say good when we're talking about such topic. United Nations Commission on Human Rights, which is responsible for the analysis of evidence gathered here and also for the on-field work in Ukraine, came to the conclusion that things that Russian soldiers do in Ukraine very much resemble genocide. Perhaps it is for the very first time that United Nations is talking about Russian genocide in Ukraine. And this is an important legal breakthrough, because for many decisions that are blocked, such wordings are important. Well, first of all, if you have some doubts, you can Google and you can find the UN definition of genocide. That is the main one, and you will find lots of examples that prove Russian soldiers are here not to just loot, but also to erase the culture, to destroy the country, and to kill civilians. They target our civilian objects like hospitals. Hospitals are sacred territories that are not for targeting during all wars and conflicts, because this is the place where people can get cured, where people can get saved. This is a place full of old people and children. And Russians have destroyed perhaps more than 100 of Ukrainian hospitals all over the country. They ruin civilian infrastructure that has no connection at all to military targets, and thus these are not legitimate targets. Compare with the targets that we choose in Auckland right now. Also, the destruction, the explosion, the terrorist act on Kakhovka Dam that led to the destruction of hundreds of houses. And I often think that it is a great tragedy that so many people literally drowned in their own beds, in their own houses, because on this temporarily occupied by terrorist territories, there was no evacuation. They did not care about people. Once again, they wanted to kill Ukrainians. Honestly, I could never believe that a nationality can decide so much. I lived in a democratic country in Europe. I lived in the world. That's how I felt. And here comes 2022 and even 2014, when you realize that the reason why you may be killed is just your nationality. Doesn't that remind you of Nazi Germany? And that's a tragedy, because Russians do that daily to Ukraine. Your brain, your beauty, your experience, nothing matters. For them, you are just a target, a Ukrainian target. Russia must be stopped. Like and subscribe to make more people support and share. So another very terrifying thing is that Russia does that on the systemic level. When we speak about crimes, when we speak about rapings, when we speak about torture, it is not that one evil soldier did something bad in one small village. This is a systemic approach. And according to the research and analysis of the UN Commission on Human Rights, Russian media and Russian military are encouraged to support the idea of genocide. This is what they talk about. They say Ukrainians should not exist, Ukrainians should be erased. And still, there are some politicians, even UN member countries that are super dependent on Russia or have their own authoritarian regimes inside. They try to pretend they don't read that, they don't see it. They did not see Bucha, they did not see Mariupol, they did not read Russian propaganda newspapers. They pretend they don't notice anything of that, and that is also a crime, and that is also a sin. So first of all, UN Commission on Human Rights, the preliminary decision in that they see signs of genocide in Ukraine, don't be afraid of that word. Second, is that Russian army and Russian media are encouraged to spread the idea of genocide against Ukrainians and treat it as something normal. This is what happened in the 30s during Holodomor genocide. We have a video on that. You can check it in Soviet crimes list. Also, what they do to children, stealing children in thousands. And even UN Commission says that it's a tragedy because they don't know how to identify many of these children. They don't know, is there a mechanism to return them back home? And these children are stolen. Their identities are changed. And I not only talk about cultural, I mean like personal identities. They get different names, different surnames, and they are taught to hate Ukraine. They are experimented on with various Russian psychological warfare, and that is a tragedy happening online. Guys, videos about Ukrainian children don't get many views because people prefer not to think about this evil happening. And Pope will say like, great Russian culture. Come on, this is a tragedy happening online. And I am really satisfied as a Ukrainian to read that UN Commission finally uses the word genocide, because it is systemic, because it is focused on the destruction and total elimination of Ukrainian nation based on Ukrainian nationality factor, because Russia denies the very existence of our history, culture and language. It destroys our civilian objects to make our life unbearable. It steals our children. It rapes, tortures and loots. There are hundreds and thousands of examples how people were tortured with electricity, with everything. The stories of people who come from temporarily occupied territories or after the liberation, they are heartbreaking, and you cannot blur them as Facebook blurs the photos. Many soldiers say that they want to liberate the territory, but it's more difficult to listen to the stories of people who live on these liberated territories, because they share awful stories, how they were tortured with electricity, how many people die being tortured, not seeing sunlight. And this is all happening online, and Russia still pretends to be a political country, and Putin is still treated as a president by many dependent on him countries, regimes, typically authoritarian regimes that copy this kind of attitude. But we have to fight, and the trial in The Hague continues. It is just one of many, I believe, and I hope soon we will see Putin either in The Hague or hanging somewhere on a beautiful birch tree next to Kremlin, both, or lying next to Lenin. If you like my ideas and you're not yet subscribed, please do. Anything will go, and then we will have to work for decades with brainwashed millions of Russian population. Thank you once again for being friends, for your support. Thank you for buying me coffees and becoming my patrons. This adds strength, and it is an honor that I'm able to continue working. Thank you for buying our t-shirts and hoodies. They are beautiful conversation starters, and we're working hard to make them more interesting. And actually soon we will launch Halloween collection with some specific meaning and specific messages. Subscribe to my Instagram, I'm pretty active there. Join my threads and Twitter community and Discord. But most importantly, continue thinking, talking about Ukraine, and thank you so much for your support. Slava Ukraini!